Okay, so I just want to kind of start off by saying thank you again for being here tonight and showing an interest in our courses. I think that if you are interested in working with lactation and breastfeeding dyads, you'll find a course that's right for you, whether you are interested in just expanding your knowledge in working with dyads, or if you actually do want to become certified as a lactation consultant. We have a lot of courses that kind of meet all of those goals. All of our courses are taught by Masters Prepared Lactation Consultants, IBCLCs. And together we've got a really varied experience. We've worked in hospitals, private practice, outpatient clinics, community health, and we've all got teaching experience. So the first course that I'm going to go through is our Foundations of Lactation Education, or we call it the FLE for short. This is a lactation specific education of 45 hours. It's 1 quarter or 11 weeks. It's online and it's asynchronous in the sense that you watch the recorded lectures and you do the homework and readings on your own time, although the homework assignments do have due dates. So you can get it all done when you want as long as you turn things in when the due dates applies. This course is a prerequisite for Pathway 2 Lactation Consultant Education course. So if you're interested in the Pathway 2, you'll need to finish this course first or an equivalent. We'll go through that when we talk about Pathway 2. And this course is really intended just as a foundational course. It doesn't go into a lot of deep dive on clinical aspects or even counseling. It kind of is a really good overview of things that you might want to know if you're working with dyads. It does not fulfill the requirements for the Certified Lactation Counselor exam, and it does not completely fulfill the requirements for the IBCLC exam as well. So you'll need more if those are your two goals. We offer this course every quarter. Our next quarters are winter, which starts in January, and then after that, it would be spring with a March start date. Our next course is a Lactation Education Counselor course, or LEC for short. This is 95 hours of lactation specific education. It's over 2 quarters or 22 weeks. It's around 6 months in length. This does fulfill the educational requirement if you're interested in sitting for the Certified Lactation Counselor exam, the CLC exam. I do want to make it clear that even though this is 95 hours, and if you've looked into the lactation consultant requirements, that also is 95 hours. This is not the same, though. I won't say it's an apples to apples comparison in terms of the UCSD offering. So this LEC course is really intended for those who are interested in counseling, in lactation counseling, or sitting for the counseling exam. We talk a lot about counseling and communication skills, about breastfeeding support, being a lactation educator. We don't go into a lot of clinical situations, and we don't give a lot of clinical plans of care or those types of things because the lactation counselor is not a clinical role. So it really is intended for those who are interested in taking the CLC course or want to be a lactation counselor or a lactation educator. And then we also have the Lactation Education Refresher course, or the LER for short. This is for those people who are already working with dyads, probably already IBCLCs, and they need some CERPs, which is the Continuing Education Unit for lactation consultants. We offer LCERPs and eCERPs, which if you're a lactation consultant, you know what those mean. They're just different types of continuing ed units. This is a 20-hour lactation course, so it's a really good way to get, like I said, a refresher course and get some of those CERPs that you need. It's only 5 weeks long. We offer this one every quarter as well, so the next one is in winter with a January start. I'll also say for the Lactation Education Counselor course, the LEC course, we start a new one every quarter as well. So that next one is a January start date as well. All right, then the Pathway 1, we have 2 courses that can lead people towards the IBCLC certification. So the first one is Pathway 1. This is 95 hours of lactation specific education. We offer a lot of extras, supplemental videos, interviews with experts in the field. So it actually comes out to a little bit closer to 120 hours. And all of the topics that we go through in this course come from the IBCLC detailed outline, which goes, that's what the IBCLC exam is based on, and also the LARC clinical skills checklist. LARC is the organization that approves and accredits lactation education. So we feel like these courses really have everything that you need to know to prepare for the exam as well as for practice. Um, like Pathway 1 is really intended. So Pathway 1 and 2, those are kind of IBCLC terms that they've created. Pathway 1 is intended for those who are already healthcare providers or they're already working with breastfeeding dyads. So they are getting their clinical hours on the job or some other way. And they still need the 95 hours of education, and that's why they might take this Pathway 1 course. If you're in the Pathway 1 course, UCSD does not support or provide clinical hours. We don't set you up with a mentor or a preceptor. We don't place you in an internship. So the clinical hours really are completely separate on your own. You're doing that your own way. And we're just providing the lactation specific education. So it does fulfill the didactic requirements of the IBCLC exam. This is also an asynchronous course, so the recorded lectures, the readings, all of that can be done on your own time, but all of the assignments do have specific due dates, and we ask that you turn things in on time. All right, now we'll get to the Pathway 2 because this is kind of our biggest course in terms of the time commitment involved. Pathway 2 is an accredited program through LARC, as I mentioned before. That's the organization that accredits lactation education. So Pathway 2, the definition of Pathway 2 is an accredited course that's housed within a university or a college. There are only about 10 Pathway 2 courses in the country, and UCSD has one of the biggest programs. It is asynchronous. So again, all of the didactic is offered online with recorded lectures. You do those and the readings on your own time. But we also provide an internship. So while somebody is enrolled in Pathway 2, they're also completing their clinical hours through an internship, either through our simulation course or through an in-person internship with an IBCLC preceptor. And that's something that UCSD places you in. We find out where you are, where you live, what places you're interested in interning with, and then we work to get you a placement there. The Pathway 1, I'll just mention the previous one. That one is 1,000 clinical hours that people are doing at their job or on their own, whereas Pathway 3 is 300 clinical hours working specifically under the supervision of an IBCLC preceptor. The curriculum is still following the IBCLC detailed outline and the LARC clinical skills checklist. So it's got all of the information in there that you need to pass the exam and to start your practice. This video, or sorry, this picture is one of our simulation classes. In the Pathway 2, even if you do have an in-person internship, we all meet online every week in Zoom. This is kind of our classroom time, and this is live online. And here's one of our groups that we've had in the past. So for Pathway 2 lactation to be considered for our program, you have to have already completed the health sciences. IBCLC requires these 14 either a health approved professional. So if you're one of these health professions, you've already completed probably those health science courses through your degree. So if you're one of these, you're probably good with that. If you are not one of these health professionals, then you probably do need to fill out complete some of the health required courses that IBCLC requires for the IBCLC. And for our Pathway 2 program, those have to be done prior to enrolling into the Pathway 2 program. If you haven't finished them by the time the application is due, then reach out to Carol and let her know where you are in the process. And there might be, if you're kind of currently in the course and it'll be finished by the time you start, just not by the time you apply, We might be able to still make a waiver for that, but we do want people to have these completed before they're in the Pathway 2 program. So there are 8 college subjects. You can see them here. UCSD does provide most of these through the Division of Extended Studies. You can also take them at your local junior college, community college, whatever works for you. If you have any questions about a course that you've already taken and you're not sure if it's going to count, I'll say probably the infant, child growth and development gets asked a lot. Carol is able to look through your transcripts and kind of help you decide if that's an approved course or not, or if you need to take something else. Then you also need to take a couple of, here's more continuation of college subjects that you need to take. And then there's also some continuing education courses. These are also required by IBCLC, and we require these to be done before you're in the Pathway 2 program. So again, it's basic life support from the American Heart Association, medical documentation, an OSHA course, things like that. These, again, some of these are offered through UCSD, but if they're not offered through us, they're fairly easy to find elsewhere. And if you have any questions, if you're having trouble finding one, we can certainly help you with that. Okay, so the Pathway 2 program, when you are ready to apply for that, like I said, you have to have all of your prerequisites done. So that's the health sciences, and those are prerequisites required by IBCLC. And then also that 45-hour course, that's a prerequisite required by UCSD. And that can be our FLE course, or it can be something equivalent to that. So if you took 45 hours somewhere else, again, we can go through, Carol can look at your course, see what it is, where you took it, and kind of determine if it's an equivalent. We'll accept that as well. Now to go through, this is the part that everybody has probably a lot of questions around, the preceptorship or the internship. So we have a couple of different ways that we go about this. One is we have the use of technology. IBCLC has allowed the use of technology to complete clinical hours, and we do that through a course called Clinical Competencies Internship, or our nickname for it is the SIM class. And that is where, again, we meet on Zoom every week. And we go through case studies. We do unfolding cases based on telehealth visits, and we do mostly role plays. In the simulation course, everybody is, we start off kind of at a pre-brief where we talk about the cases or that people have had through their internship, and we'll go through those. We also talk about cases specific to that day. What are we going to be working on this day to prepare for our visits, our client visits? And then we put everybody into breakout rooms. And in those breakout rooms, usually there are 2 to 3 to 4 interns at a time. Somebody's playing the role of the lactation consultant, somebody's playing the role of the client, and another person is playing the role of the quality assurance, where they have a checklist and they're watching to make sure the visit kind of goes the way it should, or the lactation consultant is doing all the things that she should on the checklist. We give everybody, we don't give you scripts, but we give everybody background information so that you can play your role to the best of your ability, to be so that the visit is fairly organic. Then afterwards, when everybody's done with the visit, we will come back as in our debriefing all together and talk about what was the plan of care you created, what were your concerns, what was challenging for you, what surprised you, what do you think you did that went well, and just kind of hash out what the visit. And it's interesting how everybody's visit is a little bit different, so we have a really rich conversation around that. Based on the research, we have found that 1 hour of simulation is equal to 2 hours in-person clinical in terms of learning outcomes. And so for that reason, when we're in sim class, every week you're going to complete 7 hours in this live online format, but you can count 14 hours towards your 300. If you're in person working with a preceptor, that 1 hour that you're working with her counts as 1 hour. So we do have people who are placed in an internship setting, do kind of a hybrid, but regardless of where you're filling out your hours, how you're completing them, everybody's going to complete approximately 12 to 14 hours per week to stay on track. Requirements for Pathway to continue with the onboarding process. So in order for everybody to be in an internship setting, everybody has to complete some onboarding requirements. These are requirements from the clinical sites themselves. Most of them have very similar requirements. Every once in a while, though, a clinical site will have something specific for that site that that student will have to also fill out. So the first one usually is an up-to-date immunization record. If you don't know if you're immune or have had the immunization, we recommend that you start looking for that information now. California, for example, has an immunization registry, and you can ask your parents, you can look for medical records, but basically everybody kind of has these similar requirements, and that includes flu and COVID. Megan, do you want to say anything more? Megan works on our onboarding process. So Megan, do you want to say anything more about that?
Sure. So sorry, I was trying to answer like questions in the
Oh,
chat, but
sorry. Do you want to, I can keep talking if
basically
you're.
it no. I mean, like, hopefully I'm not repeating what you've already said. But yeah, I did include in the slide that you can get titers, right? Is that how you pronounce it, Christina? Sorry.
Yeah.
Which tests your immunity. So you don't necessarily have to get the immunization if you can't find your records, or if you can find your records, great. Or if you need new documentation, you can go to like usually pharmacies, some like CVS, they might have a way that you can get these immunizations too. But also some states do have a registry, so you can um, look on there to see what immunizations you have. But it is good to start early because um, it takes time, and you might not want to get all of them all at once if you do need them. So it's good to start early.
And some of them you have to have more, if you're not familiar, some of them you have to have more than one dose. So for Hep B, for example, that requires 3 different shots spaced out. So you can't just say, oh, I'm going to get that done tomorrow. There is a timeline that you have to follow. Then Megan, do you want to talk about the rest of the onboarding requirements?
Sure. I mean, I think we just are looking for students to have basic life support. Some sites do require the American Heart Association, but I think we had talked previously that as extended studies, if you take basic life support, um, that's great with us because IBCLC doesn't um, require that it's the American Heart Association. Some of the other requirements that sometimes clinical sites require is a background check. So we have a way for you to be able to log in and do that. And some of them require drug screenings as well. And yeah, then some sites have a lot of paperwork that you need to complete or some training before you start, like online training. So yeah, it does take some time, but well worth it in the end.
Yeah, thanks. And the way the process goes, if you are interested in an internship, and the internships, we work really hard to try and find you one that's near you. We only find interns for our fall cohort. So if you really are interested in having an in-person experience, then you want to really focus on submitting all of your application and everything for fall. We also have a Pathway 2 cohort every spring. And our spring cohort is a more condensed, we call it our intensive cohort because it's condensed to 6 months versus the fall cohort is 9 months long. The spring cohort is simulation only in terms of completing clinical hours. We do not place the spring cohort into a clinical site. It's just too short to get the onboarding and the hours done in that period of time. So again, if you're interested in a hands-on experience, then you would want to apply for the fall. Otherwise, you have options of either fall or spring because we do simulation for both of those. So the process to having an in-person site is when you're applying for the fall cohort, you have a question in your application that asks, what are your top 3 clinical sites? Um, and that gives me just, I'm the one who looks for clinical sites, and that gives me just some direction of where to go in terms of your geographical area. Because our didactic is online, we have students from all over the country. So, if I'm not necessarily familiar and you're in Kansas City, this kind of just helps me know where your geographical area is. And I would love to find a place that's just down the street from you. So I'll try for those places first. If we already have an affiliation agreement, which is our contract between UCSD and that facility, then great. That's going to be a much easier process. I'm just going to make sure that they have the capacity to take an intern in the fall. And once they say yes, then we'll get you started on the onboarding process. If we don't already have an affiliation agreement and this is a site we've never used before, then that's the first step is I need to find a site that's interested, has the capacity to take an intern, and then we'll also engage into an affiliation agreement with us. The affiliation agreement process can take months to execute. So I do suggest people get their applications in as soon as possible. Once you're accepted into the program, to pay your intent to enroll fee as soon as possible. Once that fee is paid, that's when I start looking for a clinical site for you. If that fee is not paid, I don't start working for a clinical site because you haven't necessarily confirmed that you want to move forward with the program. And so it just means that, there's less time once you do say, yes, I'm in, there's just less time for us to find a site. Once that affiliation agreement is signed, then Megan will work with you to complete the onboarding requirements. So that's where she's helping you get everything together. We have a third-party platform that everybody uploads their requirements. So all of your immunizations, your background check, all of that gets uploaded. Once that's completed, then Megan sends it to the site for their approval. They give us the green light, and then we connect you with the preceptor. At that point, you guys can start working on schedulings and you're good to go. So you can see that there are quite a few steps that have to happen from the time you apply to the time you actually go to your clinical site. So the more time we have for that, the more prepared up front you are with that, just the faster the process can go. Uh, if it's not done right on day one of when the program starts, we still are working on onboarding and all of that. It just means that there's less, there's just time that you're only completing your hours through simulation, and you're not able to go to your intern yet. If you live in an area where it's just for whatever reason, we're just having a really hard time finding a clinical site that's ready to take an intern and we're not able to place you, then we have a specific cutoff before the program starts. And if we haven't found you a site by then, you have the choice to either drop the course, maybe defer to the next year, we can try again, or you can continue in the course doing 100% simulation hours. We also have international students who take our program, and they do obviously all of the hours through simulation. We aren't able to place anybody out of the US. So we do have people who, for whatever reason, are completing their hours through our simulation only, and they don't have an in-person site. So you wouldn't be the only one. And then I also wanted to mention that all of our courses are also accredited through ANCC, the American Nurses Credentialing Center. So if you are a registered nurse or a nurse practitioner and you are looking to get continuing eds for your nursing license, you can also use this course or all of our courses to fulfill that. If you have any questions, please don't hesitate to reach out to us. Here are mine, Carol, and Megan's email. We're very approachable. We're very good at getting back to you. So please don't hesitate to let us know if you have any questions. We want to make sure that you have everything you need to get into the program. And so with that, I'm going to stop sharing and we'll start answering your questions in real time. Do you guys want me to look through the chat or do you just want me to start taking questions?
Yeah, if you don't mind, there were some of them that we couldn't get to or that were too detailed for us to respond. If you don't mind helping us out.
Sure.
Thanks.
Yeah.
Yeah. I'm just looking at ones that weren't.
I
When
can
is the?
answer a few of them, Christina, because I was reading and taking notes for you.
Oh, okay, great.
Someone's like, do they help with job placement? Not usually. That was one of the questions there. And then another was about the size of the cohort.
So the size of the cohort really depends on, I mean, I would say on average, we have about 60 to 70 in the pathway 2. I'm assuming that's what you're asking about. 65 to 75 in each cohort are clinical competencies internship courses. Those are usually that particular class is usually about 20 to 30 interns at a time. Sometimes if somebody's working, they'll go to another class. So there's a little bit of fluctuation, a little bit of flexibility. Although once you have registered for a class, for example, if you're in the Tuesday class, we expect you to be in the Tuesday class. But they're usually around, I would say 25 to 30 people. I'll just I'll just also speak to the job placement. We don't necessarily help with job placement just because that is such a specific geographical situation. It's different in every part of the country. What I would recommend for you to do your due diligence, if you're wondering what are the job options or what's available out there, is to start looking at job postings in your area. That will give you
Yeah.
some indication of what the requirements are. Some places they will only hire in a hospital if you're an RN. Some places don't care if you're an RN. That's not a requirement. But that if you start looking at job postings, that'll kind of give you an indication if that's an issue for you. I would also say start going to breastfeeding coalition meetings, things like that. Start meeting the people in your area, networking. No matter where you live, the lactation community is very small. And so you definitely, the more people you know, the better. And that'll also give you some indication of how saturated is it for private practice, or what community jobs are there in community clinics, or what do the hospitals require. Um, so that can be really helpful.
And then there's a lot of questions of wherever they work, they can use those hours towards their clinical hours.
That's a pathway 1. So if you're interested in pathway 1, that's 1,000 hours, and that pathway is really intended for people who are kind of completing their hours on the job. So like if you're a postpartum nurse, for example, assumes that 20% of your day is spent on helping dyads. So if you work an 8-hour shift, you can count 20%. If you're an L&D nurse or NICU nurse, they assume about 10% of your day is spent. So you can count 10%. If you are working in another capacity, and you're just going to straight up count the hours that you're actually working, that's fine too. But pathway 1 is when you can use your hours on the job. If you're in the pathway 2 program, you can only use your hours that we have assigned either through a preceptorship through our program or in the simulation class. So if you happen to also work as a postpartum nurse, you can't count your hours for the pathway 2. When is the fall application due? So the fall application period, it's open. In the fall. Sorry, spring is open right now. Carol, do you want to speak to the fall?
It'll probably be open from March to June if you're interested in an in-person placement. And then after June, we might open it from like June to August if you're only interested in simulation. But that's why we say please get those applications in early if you do want an in-person clinical placement.
Ashton's asking, are the clinical sites typically hospitals or private consultants? So we do a mixture of both. So we have some people who are in private practice and some who are in hospitals, and that really depends on what sites are available. I would say that most sites, regardless of being hospital or in person, tends to be a Monday through Friday kind of thing. I mean, there's some flexibility there, but if you really are, let's say you have a job where you work Monday through Friday, 9 to 5, and you're thinking, oh, I can only do an internship on weekends or nights, that I can't guarantee that. Those are few and far between, and that will really limit where you can get placed. So if that's really the situation, then I would say your best bet is to probably plan on doing 100% simulation, because we do have an evening course that we offer. And you could do that, but it's hard to find a site that's going to give enough hours. I mean, you might find something that gives you some supplemental hours or like here or there, but it's going to be really hard to find a clinical site that's going to offer a lot of nights and weekends. Students. We do have some students who have reached out in the past. So if you're interested in that, you can contact me and I can see who's available to talk to you, Abby, if you want to do that. Is the Pathway to Court, it's not necessarily competitive in terms that we only have a few spots. What is competitive because we want, if somebody is interested in becoming IBCLC, there's so many barriers to becoming that. We really try to help knock the barriers down. What is competitive though is the clinical site. So let's say you live, I'll just say, like if you live in San Francisco, we tend to get a number of students from San Francisco, and I'm going to go in order of who has been accepted in the program and who has paid their intent to enroll and finding their sites first. So if you're like, I really, 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 really want Stanford, then it might be competitive because I already gave Stanford to somebody. So in that sense, it's competitive. But in terms of getting into the program, we want people who are interested in being IBCLCs to get into the program. Wix sometimes will do, Vanessa, this is you. Sometimes Wix do take interns. It just kind of depends on I mean, if you've already talked to your WIC, then that's great. But when I call WICs across the country, some of the issues are they're not busy enough. Well, there's not an IBCLC who's there often enough to take an intern, or they're not seeing as many people in person. I know a lot of WICs are still doing mostly phone and telehealth type visits. So WICs, yes, are an option. It just kind of depends on the particular WIC, on if it's a good fit. The simulation classes typically are Tuesday all day from 8 a.m. to 3 or 3:30 p.m. Wednesdays all day at the same time, and that's Pacific time zone. And then there's a third class that's 2 nights a week, and that's like a 5 to 8:30 p.m. Pacific time. And you have to attend both of those classes. Oh, let's see. Are any of the continuing requirements counted? Casey, just to make sure I'm understanding your question, the BLS, all of that, if you took a class or you've already gotten BLS, but you'd have to still show proof that you've completed it, just because you have a degree yeah.
The slide just I didn't catch all the
Oh,
courses
yeah,
on the list. So the BLS, of course I know would have to
yeah.
be, but the other ones on the list, would any of those fall under like
Some of them might. Some of them, I mean, like the ones that are the college courses, those probably do, but the other ones that are more continuing ed might not. And that would be things like there's an OSHA class, there's a medical documentation class, things like that. So if you do have any questions about that specifically, Carol would be the one to ask because she looks through all of the transcripts and applications. So you could send that to her. Well, I had so if you want to start Pathway 2 in the fall, I think we answered that. Jilly writes when it's okay. Is there a portal? Ariana, you're talking about the Pathway 1, if you're going to go Pathway 1 option. So there's not a portal, but IBCLC does have, they created, I just lost you. They created this, if you Google, I don't have the link with me because I'm in Zoom, but if you Google IBCLC clinical calculator, you will find the IBCLC, it's a spreadsheet. It's just an Excel spreadsheet, so it's nothing fancy, but they've already calculated certain things and they kind of created it in such a way that it's pretty self-explanatory in how you track it. I mean, you could just create your own spreadsheet too, but they kind of have some of it already filtered in for you.
Thank you.
Uh-huh.
Somebody's was asking also, how long does it take to become an IBCLC from the start of the semester to taking the exam to actually becoming an IBCLC? I think that's an
Great.
important conversation.
Great question. Yes. So, in case you don't know, the IBCLC exam is given twice a year. It's always given in the fall or in the spring. However, they require you to apply for the exam the fall or spring prior, so about 5 months before. So, for example, if you, like right now, the fall cohort is happening and they are going to finish their course in May to align with the the spring application period. So when they apply in the spring of 2026, they have to have all of their didactic, all of their hours done before they can apply. When they apply in the spring of 2026, it's to take the exam in fall of 2026, which is usually September, October, and then they'll get their results in December, January. If you are taking if you're applying in the fall, that's usually around September, October. So you apply in the fall, you're actually going to take, let's say you apply in the fall. Oh, like right now, people are applying right now. They're going to take their exam in the spring of 2026 and they're going to get their results in June, probably. That's usually how it works. So it is a little bit of a lengthy process. Not like if you've taken other certification exams, it's not the same as those.
Do sites ever, sorry to chime in, do sites ever hire kind of like after you've taken the exam or when you're about to take the exam, you prior to being an IBCLC, you know, with the expectation?
Yes, definitely sometimes. I mean, we've even had some interns who get hired during the course because most people know that it takes about a year to get your IBCLC once you start working on it. So that kind of depends on, are you already a health professional? So they're looking for another license and you fulfill that, or how competitive the situation is. But I always tell people, if the job sounds interesting, apply. Like, don't let being in the course or not having your IBCLC certification yet be a reason to not apply. The worst they'll do is just say, no, thank you. Francis, you're asking about a health office nurse. So I'm going to guess that not pathway 1 because you're not actually working with dyads, right? Francis Hoover, you're not working with dyads right now as a health office nurse, right, in a school? Yeah, so then you would want to do pathway 2 because you'll need a way to get your clinical hours.
Let me see.
In
I'll
the
kind
path-
of chime in with Francis, what she's saying, and what some of the other people here that are kind of asking questions. If you this is from experience from my students and also from personally, if you have the opportunity to do the simulation or to have simulation and a clinical site, you're better off. The loophole of just kind of working even in postpartum, who are you going to work with in postpartum? If you are with a dyad, you could probably help them with initial breastfeeding, basic breastfeeding, but we want to get you into a place where you're working your critical skills and clinical skills. So if you are in a nursing, in the NICU, somebody said they're in the NICU, is there an IBCLC that's going to help support and answer your questions? If you do have the opportunity to work in an environment where they will and you can have clinical placement, but you also bring it to simulation, most of the students find that most helpful to have the ability to do both. But I think one of the I think you're cheating yourself if you find that I already work in the hospital setting, I'd like a pathway 1, but who is going to be with you to give you like the meat and potatoes? And that's what the simulation offers and clinical sites offer, because you specifically will be working with an IBCLC to sign you off on specific skills every week.
Ashton, I don't know if you can hear me, but Ashton asked a question. Are students typically already nurses or medical professionals? I would say in Pathway 1, yes, just because they're already working with dyads. But for Pathway 2, no, not necessarily. We have lots of non-healthcare provider. I mean, that's kind of how Pathway 2 came to be. It was an opportunity for non-healthcare people to get their clinical experience, but we also do have a lot of medical professionals. I would say the Pathway 2 tends to be around 50-50, maybe 40-60 in terms of health professionals, non-health professionals, but we have nurses, physicians, speech language pathologists, and we have marketing professionals and accountants and stay-at-home parents. So we get the whole gamut. And actually, that I think is what makes really Pathway 2 interesting, because everybody becomes really, it's surprising and shocking to myself included that people can get close and create these relationships on Zoom in their cohorts, but they really do. And everybody brings valuable experience, even if it's not like official healthcare experience. So it's been really great. We all learn from each other.
I had a little bit
and
of a follow-up question to that
Yeah,
with some more context, because I'm looking to change careers into doing this, but I work in
you
education
get a
right
lot
now.
of those. Yep.
So I just wasn't sure if I get nervous about would I be able to either find a position in a medical facility, or like most of the time, do they want someone with the RN license, or
It
do most people
depends.
typically go into private practice? Because I'm really passionate about this. I'm just nervous that what's going to happen after I finish the
Yeah.
program.
It depends. I'll tell you, like, for example, in San Diego, most of those hospitals will only hire RN IBCLCs. In Los Angeles, we have, I think, at least 3 sites I can think of that hire non-RN IBCLCs. So it really depends. That's why I say start looking at job postings in your area so you can see what the requirements are. Then I would also say look at like just Google lactation consultants in private practice in your area and kind of see, are there a ton, and get to know them and say, like, do you feel like you're so busy you turn people away, or is it crickets, every other month, or something like that. So I think that would be more helpful than what I tell you, because you'd be looking at specific to your area. It tends to be very regionally specific.
I would talk to
Yeah.
people in your area, Ashton. I would actually reach out and speak to a lactation consultant
That's what
and
I've
see
been
what they're
trying to
doing.
do. I've emailed, I've called the ones in my area, I've called WIC offices, and like crickets. So that's where it's just been a little bit tricky for me. But I
Where are
know
you
that
located, Ashton?
I'm in Stockton, so like Northern California. I'm like 45 minutes
We
by
need you
Sacramento.
120%.
Okay.
We need you 120% in
But
stock.
I'm
That's
gonna
good
just
to
say,
hear.
not
I
to
just
like,
Yeah.
definitely, I don't know that means the hospital will take you,
Right.
but
in terms of
like
like
Central
what is
Valley.
needed, like if you were in Los Angeles, like I'm in Los Angeles County, everybody I meet is an IBCLC, childbirth educator, a doula, a birth worker, in some sorts. There's many, many people who are in private practice. We have a lot of positions within the hospital. So I would tell you it's very saturated in this area, but in the Stockton area, because I'm very familiar with that, there's not enough WIC support, and that is the majority of the people in that area. So you also have to look at that demographics. Those are the majority of the people that you'll be serving. I believe the last time, because I was just up there teaching, it's about 70% of the people in the Stockton area that receive WIC benefits. So now you're looking at the demographics of, could they afford a lactation consultation out of pocket? And the answer is usually no. So they'll drive 20 or 30 miles or reach out, or they'll meet with somebody that might do some sliding scales. So that would be if you have a particular position. I usually, when I mentor some of the people who ask and call me and ask me questions like that, a cold call, I will tell them, don't quit your J job. Start off and see what, finish the course, start putting your feelers out there, talk to the community. If you complete the LEC course, you can become an educator and teach child, lactation classes and education, and even begin to work at WIC. as a peer counselor. If it's your passion to start a private practice, what else can you bring to the table is usually what we talk about if you're a non-RN IBCLC, whether it's childbirth development. You might also look at the demographics you serve. In the community you'd like to serve. So those are the ways I would go about it. Sometimes just talking to the people at WIC and going down to the WIC office and the IBC, there's usually one. I know Stockton has one, and then the closest one to that I think is Modesto.
Thank you. That's really helpful. I'll look more into it because
But if you need more research, if you need more information on that, you can email me through UCSD, and I can connect you with some people that are our previous students that are in Stockton that would love to give you some insight in that area.
Thank you so much.
Yeah.
Sacramento, we do have some sites in Sacramento. My husband wants both IBCLC and so Aaron's question, that's interesting. I just got this question emailed to me from somebody else. I wonder if you're at the same hospital. But what I would say is I don't really understand why they're asking for a CLE and an IBCLC, because IBCLC really is the gold standard for lactation support. It is the only lactation letters behind your name that provides clinical expertise. It's the only program that gives clinical training. A CLE, like a true CLE, certified lactation educator, the only way to get a certified lactation educator is through CAPA. So you're taking one person's education course and taking their exam. But that's really just for education, and it's not clinical at all. And so I'm not sure why they would want both. But Aaron, if they truly want a CLE, a certified lactation educator, that's through CAPA. If you're talking about CLE, like what UCSD used to provide something in the past that used those CLEC, too many letters. I know it's confusing. But that now is the Lactation Education Counselor course, which aligns to the requirements for the Certified Lactation Counselor exam. So I guess that's my really long way of saying I don't think you need both, and I don't know why your job wants you to get both. But that's my 2 cents. If you want to talk about that after, I'm happy to.
Somebody's asking about the CLC. Can they sit for the CLC exam after this course?
After the Pathway 2 course or Pathway 1, you can. Some people will do that because they want to have some letters behind their name while they're waiting to take the exam, while they're waiting the 6 months to take the exam and get their certification. Some people feel like they want to have that so that they can start doing something. I'll just say again, I think that that's an option. Do you have to do that? I don't think so. Because again, only if your job would require it, or for some reason you felt like you needed it to have a job or to move forward in your private practice. Because really, again, the IBCLC is the gold standard. So you would eventually want to get that anyway.
Hi, I'm Erin. I submitted that question. Yeah, I was talking with I work in the NICU. I was talking with our lactation consultant yesterday about it, and she said, oddly, I'm at Kaiser in Northern California.
Yep, I was going to ask if you're at Kaiser because I just got an email.
Yeah, and she said that lactation consultant said, or she's IBCLC, but she said, strangely enough, they want the CLE, and you don't technically have to have the IBCLC, but you won't get hired without it. So yeah, it's just strange.
That makes no sense.
That's just HR writing the actual job. They don't know what they're doing. That's the honest to God truth.
I literally have just been going back and forth with somebody about this very thing. I don't know which Kaiser she's at, but she's at a Kaiser. So I don't think it's just you, but it does.
Just like AI, like what do they need? And they probably came up with 75 different variations of lactation.
Yeah.
Because I feel that's how many of their initials there are out there.
Yeah. Yeah. Who do I contact to see if my 95 hours through Breastfeed LA are accepted? If you have a question about if your course, Deirdre, if you would send that to Carol, she can look at your course and determine your transcripts or your courses if it's approved.
However, we won't accept, like, if you've already done 95 hours of lactation education
Oh,
and you want to do our Pathway 2 program, you have to do the whole program together. We don't offer just the clinicals by themselves.
yeah, the 95 hours through another place, though, that would count in place of the 45-hour requirement. True, Carol? Yeah. But yeah, you would still be taking the Pathway to 95 hours. Thank you for clarifying. So good question, Abby. How much time is committed to the program? So I usually tell people Pathway 2 is like a part-time job of around 20 hours a week, because you're doing, that 12 to 14 hours in clinical, whether that's in simulation, you're doing 7 hours at least a day. And then if you're adding another day to do a clinical in-person setting. So, it's usually like 2 shifts kind of a thing. And then I would say that the readings and the lectures themselves are recorded lectures, and I would say that's between like 5 and 6 hours a week of recorded lecture, and then the readings on top of that. So I do always recommend to people, if this is something that you're going to do, it's a lot of money, it's a lot of time that you've committed towards it. So I really encourage you, before you even go for it, is to think, how am I going to carve out time in my life to make this work? Who am I going to get to support me, like in terms of childcare or time away from, other commitments? I think that if you're going to invest this much time and money into the program, then you owe it to yourself to make the time work, so that you don't feel like you're always behind, or you're, not getting what you really need out of it. The shifts for the in-person, that also is very site specific. We have some sites, their LCs only do 6-hour shifts. We have some sites where they do 8 and some where they do 12. So that just kind of depends on the site that you get. Obviously, if you're not able to do 12, you can say I'm only here for 8. Usually that can work. I think most of these have been answered. So if anybody has any other questions that they want to just say aloud, there is a scholarship opportunity, but it's a retroactive scholarship. So everybody applies and is in the program. So you've already paid your fee. And then once we have our cohort, we do a scholarship opportunity, and then it's like a refund. How many chances to take the IBCLC exam? 1. And it's an expensive exam, so we really want everybody to pass. But yeah, it's only given it's given twice a year. That's all over the world. It's given just those 2 times at the same time all over the world. People are taking the exam. Liz, let's talk afterwards. City, the sites in LA that hired non-RNs: Cedar, Sinai, Kaiser Baldwin Park. Who else, Christina? Who am I missing?
You have Arcadia, USC.
I feel like there's another one that I'm.
Well, sometimes you get UCLA will do it. It just depends. But
yeah, UCLA.
UCLA. I will say, I know there's a lot of questions about time and time management. If you have littles, you want to make sure you have somebody with them on that particular day. So that would be a like 8-hour day. If you're in simulation, 7-hour day in simulation, to be able to have somebody else with them. If you're a nursing parent, or you have a little, or you have to be pumping, it's kind of the exception. I think that's one of the questions that we get asked a lot before. And then a lot of you have full-time jobs, and kind of why you are, this opportunity is, I think, golden, to be able to continue to work and provide, but still do the lactation program. You just have to remember, it's like Christina said, it's like treat it like a part-time job. And you might be the person who's like, I put the kids down, or I close up shop, or I get home and I can be up for the next 2 or 3 hours and do homework and things. And others will do it first thing in the morning. I know right now I have my cohort everybody pretty much has a full-time job or really small littles at home. So they actually stay after together, and they'll do their homework and chat and then do didactic throughout the week. It is asynchronous, but yes, it's a challenge once you get started. But once you get into the groove, most people are coming back saying, I'm so glad I sacrificed and I took the time, because, you know, to be able to do it any other way would be pretty difficult.
The Pathway 1 does not have a prerequisite. If you're interested in taking the Pathway 1 didactic, you just apply for that one. Deirdre, do you want to ask your question?
Yes, I was trying to figure out, as far as, so if we get into the program for Pathway 2, then what does it look like as far as reading material? Are there separate like books and stuff that we need to make sure that we're budgeting for, or are reading materials already provided along with the course? How does that look?
There is a textbook. Right now we're using Breastfeeding and the Human Lactation, but next year in 2020, starting fall of 2026, it'll change to Counseling the Nursing Family. I don't know the price offhand because that's a new one, but I'm going to guess it's around $100-ish. And then all of the other readings we supply to you, like journal articles, are uploaded into the course, so you have access to those through the course.
Okay. And has the
I will
deadline?
say, I'm sorry for interrupting, but I just want to, before I forget. So the other fee that you might incur is if you have a clinical site, if you're doing Pathway 2 and you have a clinical site, there is a fee for the onboarding stuff, like the immunizations, background check, drug test, that sort of thing. That's a fee for the intern as well.
Okay, yeah, I wouldn't be worried about that part. I'd be looking at doing the simulation. That would just work better for me. I've got a little, so and he's breastfed. So simulation would work best for me. I was mostly just worried about the cost for books and stuff. And then I guess I'll send my stuff to, was her name Carol?
Carol.
Yes, I'll send my stuff to Carol to make sure that the classes that I took meet the prerequisites that you guys need for Pathway 2. I believe that they do. It says that they do, but I just want to verify that they do.
Good idea.
And I believe that was it. Yeah, I think that was it.
Okay. All right.
Okay, thank you so much. Oh no, I'm sorry. One last question. Has the deadline already passed for the classes that start in January, or are the applications that you guys are taking now are the classes that start in March?
You're interested in Pathway 2, right?
Yes.
So the next cohort of Pathway 2 starts in March, and the application period that's open right now.
Okay.
Yeah.
Alrighty. Thank you so much.
Thanks.
Hi, Christina. This is Tanisha. I just have a question really quick.
Uh-huh.
Does the FLE course, is that included in the $8,500 tuition?
No, that's a separate course.
Okay, so do you need to take that before you enroll, or you can do them simultaneously?
I would recommend that you do before, because then it's going to be a lot if you do them simultaneously. Carol, I think, do you want to speak to this, Carol? Or do you want to speak to it?
We'll work with you, but we do recommend that you do that class in advance. If you do register for the class that begins in January, there'll be a slight overlap with Pathway 2, but that's absolutely fine.
And that course is offered every quarter, right?
Correct.
The FLE course is yes.
Okay. And so again, if you wanted to do Pathway 2, if you only wanted to do the sim part, you would just apply in the spring versus the fall, or you can apply for both semesters.
Yeah, you can do simulation in the fall as well if you really wanted to.
Okay.
It's just that we only do simulation in the spring, but in the fall,
Oh, okay.
that's when we work to find our clinical internships is for the fall cohort.
Okay. Alrighty. That's good to know. Thank
Yeah.
you.
Sure. Yeah, any other questions?
If you did the fall cohort so that you could have a mix of in-person and online simulation, is there like, does it have to be 50-50 or could you know what I mean? Like, could you break it up if you really have a limited availability to do in person, but that's still important? Or in that case, would you recommend doing the spring and then just doing like observation with someone, but it wouldn't really count? You know what I
For
mean?
the simulation, we do have some days that we have designated everybody has to join, either because we're going through something really particular, like a rare kind of case, and we want to, or it's a proficiency assessment, kind of like a test out day. So there are some days that are sprinkled in that are required for everybody. And then the other days you don't necessarily have to attend simulation if instead you're attending your in-person site. I will say you just need to, I just tell people you really need to track your hours because one clinical site day is not necessarily equal to the number of hours as one sim day. So you don't want to get yourself behind on hours. Honestly, I will tell you that most people, when they have the availability, I understand that life is full, but if you have the availability, most students end up doing both every week if they can, just because it's a totally different way of learning. It's not better or worse. They're both just very different. And so interns tell us they get very different things from each of the options. And also we do have the time to answer your questions in the sim class that you don't always have with a preceptor in clinic just because it is so busy. So it's just a different it's just kind of a different opportunity. What else can I answer?
Will you please answer the question from Catherine Cho about she works in a pediatric office?
Oh, thank you. I didn't see that. Working in pediatric as PA. So if you're going to do pathway 1 and if you don't need somebody to sign off necessarily, but what you will need is a way to verify them if you're audited. So when you submit your application for IBCLC, usually they don't ask for verification then. They just ask like fill out your numbers, how many hours, all of that. They do audit people. So if you audit, doesn't mean something's bad. It just means you were the one picked. And then when you are audited, that's when you're going to have to upload something. So that could be a supervisor's letter or something like that, just validating that, confirming those hours. So I would say be prepared for that. Good question, Jamie asked about a time limit for prereq courses. So there isn't a time limit for the prereq courses for the UCSD program. However, IBCLC does have a time limit that when you apply for the exam, you can only use things for 5 years prior. So your hours, your didactic, all of that cannot be older than 5 years. Did I say 5 hours? I meant 5 years prior to that. So you can't say, well, I took that 95-hour course, 10 years ago. It doesn't count anymore. So be aware of that when you start the clock. Anything else?
What, in terms of the didactic portions between the spring and the fall options for pathway 2, what does that look like time-wise week by week, would you say? Like on average, or does it seem to show up mostly in the clinical hours?
Ask me that one more time. Sorry, it's typing. I'm terrible at typing and listening.
So since the spring course is 6 months and the fall course is 9 months.
Yeah.
On like a weekly basis, what does that look like from like a time commitment perspective? Like, does it really spread it out over 9 months or does it end up being kind of similar and really the hours look?
So the main difference is it is spread out a little bit more over the 9 months because we do have some weeks off. We have more weeks off in the fall cohort. just because of holidays, and we also don't meet as often during the spring quarter because we've started the actual spring cohort. So we have some overlap there between the two different cohorts. So the fall will meet once a month rather than once a week for the March, April, and May months. So you can still work with your preceptor. If you have an in-person site, you can still work with your preceptor during those months. We're just meeting as simulation class once a month. So
like
it is the lectures, so you're still doing didactic during those weeks off. It's just that we don't meet in sim class during the spring. So we have more sim class weeks off, but you're still meeting, you're still doing didactic stuff. They're two different courses. So what I would say is it is a little bit more intense in the spring because you're kind of smooshing, maybe not 9 months worth, but like 8 months worth into a 6-month period. You do have more hours of recorded lecture per week because you still have to get all of those weeks in. Because the didactic truly is more 9 months in the fall. Does that make sense?
Yep. Yeah.
Yeah. What else? So I put my email in the chat so everybody would have that. Oh yeah, and Megan did too. And so if you want to give me an email, and then hopefully you have Carol and Megan if you want to put your emails in there as well. If you think of questions, because you'll probably think of something as soon as we log off, then you can certainly do it then. Yeah, Elise?
Hi, I have a quick question. So the FLE and the LEC do not need to be, they don't need to be taken if I'm planning to be an IBCLCE.
Yeah, so
Sorry,
you would
all the letters.
I know, it's crazy. You would take the FLE course as a prerequisite for the Pathway 2 program at UCSD. That's a prerequisite. But if you're doing Pathway 1 and you don't want to be a CLC or anything, then no, you don't need to take all of those.
And is there kind of, so I'm based in LA, and there are a lot of IBCLC.
Yeah, I know what you mean.
There are a lot of them.
Yeah.
And it looks like from the job search that I've been doing, they do want you to at least be a CLC if you're not a full IBCLC.
Well, if you want to work with breastfeeding dyads, you have to be something.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, they want you to be a CLC versus a CLES, which I believe is just an educator.
Yeah.
But my question is, your program for the IBCLC is 95-hour, and you won't accept basically a 95-hour from another program?
The 95 hours from another program would fulfill the prerequisite for the Pathway 2, but it won't take the place of the Pathway 2 95 hours.
Oh, okay. So
what
you still have
happens
to
is
do both.
Yeah, if you're a Pathway 2 graduate, that means that you're going to apply for the IBCLC exam as a Pathway 2 candidate. We can't sign off and say, oh, sure, she did her 95 hours because we weren't the provider of that. So the definition of Pathway 2 is that you're getting your didactic and your clinical in one place from the university.
Okay, thank you for clarifying that, because I was also looking into CSUN because they have the 95-hour program, but they don't have it. It does not include any clinicals for your IBCLC.
Yeah, so that's going to be similar to the Pathway 1 that we offer, where it's just didactic, it's no clinical.
Oh, okay. Thank you so much.
And that, to be honest, is really geared towards people who either already work with dyads, so they're getting their hours on the job, or maybe you know an IBCLC who's agreed to be your mentor and you two have created a Pathway 3 program. That's like, we don't offer that, so I'm not going to talk too much about that, but that would be the situation there at least.
Okay, thank you so much.
Jillian?
Hi, just to be clear, so the sim clinicals are either once a week, which would be all day on Tuesday, you said, or twice a week and sometime in the evenings, and you can either choose between one of those two options?
We usually have 3, depending on the size of the cohort, we usually have 3 sim classes. One is all day Tuesday, one is all day Wednesday, and one is 2 evenings a week.
Okay, and you choose one of those.
Yeah.
Okay, great, thanks.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, you register for a particular time slot, so to speak.
I have one more question.
Yeah.
When is the application due for the spring course?
For the Spring Pathway 2 course? Is that what you're leaning toward?
Yeah.
I believe we will accept applications through the end of February. And it starts March 3rd, Christina, does that sound right?
The first week of March.
Okay.
So
And then
because it's simulation, we don't need the time required to secure a clinical placement. So we can accept applications up until the end of February.
okay. And then those continuing ed courses like the BLS, those ones, do those need to be completed prior to beginning Pathway 2?
We would like them to be completed just because we want you to be successful in Pathway 2 program. If you have a unique situation, just reach out and I'm happy to work with you individually.
Thanks so much.
Anything else? Like I said, if you think of any other questions after we log off, please don't hesitate to email, reach out. Otherwise, thank you so much for joining, and we hope to see you in the fall or the spring. Good night.